years old.
All I said is your father is dead. That's all I said, and I left it at that.
And then he went to the store to get him some milk and some Pampers, and he got killed. That was a lie, too.
If you're not sure she's mine, why should I?
We had sex, Josh.
Yeah, we did.
It's a possibility. The possibility is what should have had you there.
But I told him as soon as I found out I was pregnant with her. He had so much anger, he decides to announce it with a room full of our friends and my mom.
Ms. Lee has recently found out that the man that raised her isn't actually her father, and her real father is dead. Frances believes that Ms. Lee is her real sister, and now Ms. Lee is given the time to tell the courtroom that this is a tough position for her to be in, one in which she has to accept that she was raised by someone who isn't her father, but the idea of siblings does indeed intrigue her.
So finding out that your biological father could be a deceased man that you'll never be able to meet.
Well, Your Honor, from the beginning of this has been real confusing and overwhelming for me, mainly because I only knew one man to be my father my whole life until he died. I was a daddy's baby, and with me and my father was very close.
Frances goes on to tell the courtroom how she was previously informed that Sonia died from AIDS, but her father did not believe this was the case on his deathbed. And as it turns out, Frances's sister Davis found Sonia.
We were informed that she had passed away, that she had she had been doing bad and she had AIDS and she passed away. And when I came and see my dad and I informed him, he said he had no recollection of it, he wasn't told and he didn't believe it, so he wanted us to find her.
Ms. Lee starts telling the court on how she came in contact with Davis. Originally, she was ignoring her, but then, after a spam of messages, she spoke to Davis and was confused as to what Davis was talking about because she went from being one man's daughter to now someone else's daughter and being dead and in another man's obituary.
I didn't respond to the messages for a while, let me say that, because it didn't make sense to me. I didn't recognize her picture, I didn't recognize her name, and it was saying they were looking for their sister. And so at this point, I'm like, it can't be me. So I kept ignoring it. Maybe after 3 or 4 messages, I finally responded to where I responded to Miss Davis, and where we exchanged numbers and I called her and she just started spilling the story out, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, slow down.
Ms. Lee is a little confused on how even after living in such a small town, she didn't know whether it was her real family or not. When she initially brought this to her mother outright refused it. Ms. Lee has some doubts, but ultimately, she is heartbroken on the childhood she missed out on.
I grew up in a small city, and then to be this close to my family and not know it did hurt me. Yes, I had a father, but if I had something, so I kind of had some resentment about that. You know, they knew about me, I didn't know about them, my mom knew, my dad knew, but nobody told me. And then even when I got old enough to understand and accept it, nobody told me.
Ms. Lee's mother explains to the court how she was involved romantically with Frances's father, but upon her being pregnant, Frances's father disappeared from her life. Mr. Lee, the man who brought Ms. Lee up, was with her during the time of the pregnancy and took care of them both. Did Ms. Lee have a right to know about this?
For Mrs. France, and when she was born, Mr. Lee was there with me, and he took care of me and her. Mr. Miller, I never saw him again. I never told her because I didn't think she needed to know.
All of these disasters have made Ms. Lee emotional. It looks like she might cry in court. She's uncertain if the truth is that she does have siblings, and she's unwilling to accept that truth until the DNA tests come back. She wants her children to have the opportunities that she didn't have, so long as the results do come back indicating that Frances and Davis are indeed her siblings.
Because
what are you scared of?
I'm scared both ways, I guess, because if it come back that it's not, it's gonna hurt me. Because I already have love for both of these women.
And we love you too. And we love you too.
I'm scared to embrace it because if it ain't real, and I'm scared to embrace it. So that's why it was so important for me to find out the truth. People will say, you know, well, why go through with it now? Y'all grown. We got kids.
Jerome hands Judge Lauren the envelope and a silence enters the courtroom. Will Ms. Lee find out whether she does indeed have siblings, or will this all be a facade built by Frances's father and a lie that will haunt Ms. Lee the rest of her life? It's time for the results.
Ms. Lee, they are indeed your biological brother and sister.
All right.
I told you.
He can rest and you can be happy.
Yeah, he can rest and you can be happy knowing that we are here. Okay?
Mr. Mason is uncertain about the paternity of 1-year-old Avery due to Ms. Malone's alleged infidelity. He had suspicions about her fidelity and set up a watchdog to monitor her activities while he was away, which unveiled men coming and going from their home. While Ms. Malone admits to cheating, she is confident that Mr. Mason is Avery's biological father.
Mr. Mason, you say today will determine the future of your relationship with the defendant, Ms.
Malone. You say you lost all trust when you set up a watchdog to keep tabs on Ms. Malone and discovered that she had men coming in and out of the house while you were at work. And now you believe 1-year-old Avery is not your daughter. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Mason and Ms. Malone, in an on and off relationship for 3 years, currently cohabit despite being off. Mason remains primarily for the children and hopes of reconciliation. The impending DNA results are crucial, as they not only dictate their relationship, but also their shared living situation.
Were you all
My knowledge,
committed?
we was in a relationship.
Your Honor,
still.
yeah, we've been on and off for 3 years now. Right now, we're off.
Are you living together?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're off, but you live together.
Yes, Your Honor.
It's been like that.
How's that work?
It's real awkward.
After quickly moving in together post their meeting, Ms. Malone felt overwhelmed as her relationship with Mr. Mason intensified. Although initially unintended, their cohabitation soon led to a deeper relationship than she anticipated. Mr. Mason, suspecting Malone of deceit, employed a friend to monitor his front door, taking on a detective-like role.
Okay, you and your oh, he moved in.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So the bottom line is very quickly after you met, all of a sudden you were living together.
Yes, Your Honor.
So when you say, Ms. Malone, it all just happened so fast and I was young, I was 19 years old, next thing you know, I'm kind of in this relationship with a guy, but once he's living with me, then it kind of turned into more of a relationship than you expected.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Malone admitted to not using protection during her affair, while also being intimate with Mr. Mason during the possible conception period. Upon learning she was pregnant, she informed both men of the possibility of them being the father. She claims to have disclosed the infidelity and its implications to Mr. Mason.
When you were out with this other person, was that during the window of conception?
Yes, Your Honor, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when you were cheating, did you all use protection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. When you cheated, did you also have an intimate relationship with Mr. Mason during the same window of conception?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Mason shared a memory of announcing Ms. Malone's pregnancy in front of others, suggesting doubt over Avery's paternity. In this public setting, he stated the child might not be his. Additionally, Ms. Malone presented a Facebook post where they conversed about their oldest and youngest child, further highlighting the contention surrounding Avery's paternity.
Mr. Mason, you are not her father. What are you feeling in this moment, sir?
I'm mad, Your Honor, but I can't be really mad about something that I already knew.
Miss White claims Mr. Flowers is the father of her 4-month-old Major and seeks 1846-54 for childcare expenses. She alleges buying all of Major's necessities, while Mr. Flowers returned the few items he purchased. Mr. Flowers doubts paternity, suggesting White is targeting anyone with money.
White, you say you have no doubt when it comes to who your 4-month-old child Major's biological father is, even though you were intimate with the neighborhood ice cream man during the window of conception. You are seeking a DNA test as well as $1,846.54 in child care expenses, correct?
Correct.
In an intense paternity court session, a woman was adamant about Mr. Flowers being the father due to their consistent unprotected sexual encounters. However, Mr. Flowers expressed doubt, mentioning their relationship lacked commitment, suggesting she might have other partners. When she informed him of her pregnancy, he apparently showed indifference.
Somewhat doubt, but with me and Mr. Flowers,
Somewhat doubt. Tell me why you believe he is.
because me and Mr. Flowers, that's all we did was have sex. You know, that was our relationship, was based on sex, unprotected sex at that. So.
And you were having sex with Mr. Flowers during the window of conception.
Yes.
Mr. Flowers recounted an incident when he spent the night at Miss White's place. She fell asleep, and he saw an explicit text message from another man on her phone, which deepened his doubts regarding the child's paternity. These messages reinforced his suspicion that another man, Mr. Miles, might be the father of Major.
Me and Miss White, we was kicking it, and I had spent the night over there. She fall asleep, text message come through. And man, I don't even know where to begin that, Judge. It get real explicit
and that's only
and
because
everything.
he wasn't around. He wasn't around.
I never said nothing to her neither, because I ain't the argumentative, fighting type of guy.
Miss White vehemently denies telling Mr. Miles he might be the father, but Mr. Miles contradicts her, recalling a conversation where she did insinuate he might be the father. Mr. Miles, already a father to 8 children, believes he can recognize his own features in his kids.
While you're telling Mr. Flowers he's the father, did you ever tell Mr. Miles he was the father too?
No.
You was a lot.
Mr. Miles?
No, I really didn't. I really did
What
not.
did she tell you, Mr. Miles?
She had called me. We talked a little bit, and then she come talking about, yeah, it's possibly that Major could be your child. And
So she told you?
Yeah.
Miss White's messages suggest she's seeking a father for her child who can provide financially. When confronted about the money-focused text, she clarifies she means someone present daily and also contributing financially. However, her explanations don't convince everyone, making her appear as if she's chasing after money.
First one says, LOL, you just don't know. My child got so many men willing to do your part. The next text says, my baby need a pops that's getting money on a daily.
I ain't no drug dealer, so I ain't getting money on the daily, man.
So when I text Mr. Flowers that my baby need a dad that's gonna be there, that's basically what I...
Whitfield confronts White, accusing her of being a homewrecker and disrupting her relationship with Mr. Miles. Miss White denies knowingly interfering in an existing relationship. The tension rises as Miss Whitfield claims that Miss White was aware of their relationship. The situation becomes even more complicated when Miss Whitfield reveals she found out about the baby through a mutual friend.
These results were prepared by DNA Diagnostics, and they read as follows. Mr. Flowers.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
knew
Thank
that.
you, Jesus.
I already knew that.
That's cool.
Ms. Whitfield and Mr. Miles, I know you are relieved.
Big relief.
$923.27.
I sure can.
Mr. Hoyer found out his father was allegedly killed, and he's in the courtroom today to prove to his father's deceased family, his sister, Ms. Potter, and his father's mother, Ms. Horn, that he is his father's son. Ms. Potter was told on her brother's passing that he has no son. Lastly, Ms. Gentry is present, who is Mr. Hoyer's mother, and is unsure as to who his father is.
Ms. Porter, you and your mother, Ms. Horn, who's joining us from her hometown, are adamant that Mr. Hoyer is not biologically part of your family.
Yes, Your Honor.
You claim that before Mr. Horn passed away, he clearly stated that he had no children, and you believe today's DNA results will prove him right.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hoyer explains, Mr. Horn is his father, and his adopted brother lived next door to Mr. Horn's brother. And when he went to visit Mr. Horn's brother, the brother confirmed that there is a similarity in what Mr. Hoyer's hands look like to Mr. Horn's. But will Ms. Horn believe these assumptions?
Like, so you're my brother's son. I was like, I guess I am. I really don't know. He was like, well, let me see your hands. So I stuck my hands like this, and they looked at my hands. They were like, you do have our hands. You have just small hands, but the long fingers. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, my brother had the same type of hands as you do. That actually got me excited for a brief minute, but there was others in the household that was like, you don't look like my brother.
Ms. Gentry goes on to tell the court on how her and Mr. Horn's relationship was a secret, and how after her son, Mr. Hoyer, was born, Mr. Horn had seen him one time. And the only reason for which her son did not have a relationship with Mr. Horn was due to the fact that her family was not accepting of biracial relationships. Ms. Potter, Mr. Horn's sister, does not believe a word of what Ms. Gentry has said.
So what you're saying is you were open and honest with your son that you had also been intimate with another man before Mr. Horn?
Yes. Yes, me and my sons talked about this.
So when you had your son, was Mr. Horn there? Was he involved with your son?
Yes, Mr. Horn seen my son one time.
Anyway, this family drama has turned into a huge disaster. Ms. Potter tells Ms. Gentry that if this case is true, and he really is her brother's son, she will get involved in his life and give him the care he's been lacking for the past 23 years of his life.
Oh, wait, you coming back to that?
Yes, we're gonna go back to that. We're gonna go back to all of it, because we're gonna get the truth today.
Well, you know
today is the truth. And if he is, after 23 years, he won't have to deal with you. He won't have to deal with you.
Always be his
because
mother.
he will get what's coming to him.
Why not? I always be his mother.
You might always be the mother, but you're not a mama.
Mr. Horn feels happier knowing there is a place where he'd be accepted and wanted, and he's hopeful that Mr. Hoyer was indeed his father. Judge Lauren has reminded him that he indeed does deserve this type of love, and the results have now come into the courtroom.
As it pertains to the likelihood of whether Mr. James Horn is your biological father, the DNA test results have determined that Mr. Horn is not likely your biological father.
See, son, you shouldn't have done this.
No, you shouldn't have done this.
Ms. Smith is concerned about who her 4-month-old's father is. It could either be her fiancé, Mr. Brooker, or her ex-boyfriend. The defendant is confused because when she started seeing her fiancé, she had recently broken up with her ex-boyfriend, and a month after having sex with Mr. Brooker, she was pregnant.
So, Ms. Smith, explain to the court why your fiance may not be your child's biological father.
Well, Your Honor, me and Lamontre met back in college last year, but at that time I was with my ex-boyfriend, so I knew I couldn't talk to Mr. Brooker. So when me and my ex-boyfriend ended up breaking up, I talked to Lamontre and I invited him to my birthday party.
Mr. Brooker gives his perspective on the situation and how when he found out Mrs. Smith was 6 weeks pregnant instead of 8, and that hurt him. And then she was open in her conversation with him with regards to this situation and that the only 2 people possible to be her baby's father is either him or her ex-boyfriend.
And I was like, okay, and I'm laying down and she said, I just went to the doctor and I found out I was 6 weeks instead of 8. And I'm like, my heart dropped. I was like, oh my God. So I was like, okay, cool. All right. So we got him in person. We talked about it. She said it may be a possibility. She was sure of who it was. And we were the only, me and her ex were the only 2 dudes that she was with during the time.
Ms. Smith brings out a calendar to show her timeline of being sexually active and even provides evidence in the courtroom, which indicate that in her first 2 doctor appointments, the date she's given aligns with the time during she was with her ex. But the 3rd appointment, that's when disaster happened.
I was stating that me and Mr. Brooker had sex August on the 14th, and then that's when I went to the doctor again on the 24th, and they gave me a date of May 13th. And at that time, I'm like, that corresponds with the time me and him started having sex.
The court calls upon a doctor to understand this discrepancy as Ms. Smith's child was not only born premature, but the birth dates she was provided with are a month apart. The doctor explains that the original due date was a potential one, and since her periods are irregular, provided due dates can be irregular. However, the date given after the ultrasound is the most accurate one.
So, Dr. Gator, as you can see, on July 17th is the last time Ms. Smith was intimate with her ex.
Yes.
Now, on August 14th was when she was intimate with Mr. Brooker.
Correct.
First due date she got was April 9th.
Yes, correct.
The second one, 7 weeks later, was the date. How can that happen, and why does that happen?
It actually happens more often than you would think.
Mr. Brooker brings to notice how upon the birth of his alleged child, he was very confused, and so he used a DNA test provided by his cousin on the child, whilst the child was in the NIC unit due to being born prematurely.
I know you're happy that the baby's here, but I can imagine you were thinking in your mind, now what date does this go with?
That, and is he okay? And it was a lot going through my mind.
I could imagine. So now you really are like, I gotta have a DNA test.
Correct.
And so what do?
Well, my cousin bought a test for me. I took it there to the hospital.
So your cousin brought an at-home DNA test.
Yes, ma'am.
The at-home test has proven otherwise, but Mr. Brooker is determined in his belief that the child is indeed his, and he just wants the DNA test to prove so as well. And Ms. Smith believes in her heart, too, that Mr. Brooker is the father. All that's left is for the judge to read out the results in front of her.
Mr. Brooker, you are not his father. I'm sorry to have to deliver that news.
It's okay.
Ms. Smith, what are you feeling right now?
That was not what I was hoping.
It's all right, baby.